The credit card statement arrived on a Tuesday morning, and that's when my world started unraveling. $3,000 charged to Pine Ridge Mountain Lodge for a corporate retreat I'd never heard of. I stared at the paper, coffee growing cold in my hand, while Nessa hummed in the kitchen like nothing had changed. "Hey, babe," I called out, keeping my voice level. "What's this Pine Ridge charge about?" She poked her head around the corner, blonde hair perfectly styled even at 7 in the morning. "Oh, that's just the work thing I mentioned, team building retreat." $3,000 seems steep for team building. Her smile faltered for just a second. "It's a nice place. We're doing it right this time." I'm Jared Sollace, and I fix computers for a living. Started as a mechanic, worked my way up to IT consulting. I notice details other people miss, like how Nessa's eye twitched when she said, "We're doing it right this time," like how she'd been working late more often, like how her phone was suddenly password protected. "So when is this retreat?" I asked. "This weekend, Friday through Sunday." She disappeared back into the kitchen. "You'll have the house to yourself. Maybe catch up on those boring documentaries you love." That stung, but I let it slide. Marriage is about picking your battles, right? Except lately, I felt like I was losing a war I didn't know I was fighting. After Nessa left for work, I did what any suspicious husband would do. I checked her laptop. She'd left it synced to her phone, probably forgot about it. The group chat was right there, messages from last night still glowing on the screen. Nessa: "Can't wait for the boys' weekend. Going to be epic." Mitch C: "Jared's not coming, right? This is male-only territory." Nessa: "Obviously not. He wouldn't fit in anyway. Too blue-collar for our crowd." Rita HR: "LMAO. What happens at Pine Ridge stays at Pine Ridge." Gavin Sales: "Initiation time. Hope you can handle it, Nessa." Mitch I: "She'll do fine. We've been practicing." My hands shook as I scrolled through more messages. Jokes about breaking in the new guy, references to previous initiations, and enough innuendo to make a sailor blush. The worst part wasn't the crude humor. It was seeing my wife laugh along, calling me a blue-collar bore, and promising to show the boys what I'm made of. I sat back in my chair, mind racing. Mitch Cavanaugh, I knew that name. Son of Henry Cavanaugh, who owned half the construction contracts in town, privileged pretty boy who'd never worked a real day in his life. And apparently, my wife's new best friend. The front door slammed. Nessa was back. Probably forgot something. "Jared, what are you doing on my laptop?" I turned around slowly. She stood in the doorway, face flushed with anger and something else. Guilt, maybe. "Just checking the weather," I said. "Wanted to see if it'd be nice for your retreat." "That's my personal laptop. You have no right to use the laptop I paid for, in the house I pay the mortgage on." I stood up, and she took a step back. "Relax, Nessa. I just saw some interesting messages about your boys' weekend." Her face went pale. "It's not what you think." "Really?" "Because I think my wife is planning some kind of initiation ritual with her male colleagues, using my credit card while making jokes about how I wouldn't fit in." I crossed my arms. What part did I get wrong? "You're being paranoid. It's just work friends having fun." Male-only fun? With initiation jokes? And you promising to show them what you're made of? I shook my head. "How long has this been going on, Nessa?" "Nothing's going on. God, you're so insecure." "Am I? Then why don't you invite me along? I'd love to meet these work friends of yours." She looked trapped, eyes darting around the room like she was searching for an escape route. It's complicated. Office politics. You wouldn't understand." "Try me." "Look, some of the guys aren't comfortable around outsiders. They need to trust you first." "And the best way to build trust is through secret weekend retreats where my wife gets initiated?" I laughed, but there was no humor in it. "You know what, Nessa? Have your fun, but you're paying for it yourself." I walked to my desk, pulled out my phone, and dialed the number on the credit card statement. "Pine Ridge Mountain Lodge. This is Janet." "Hi, I need to cancel a reservation under Sollace. Confirmation number?" I rattled off the numbers while Nessa watched, mouth open. "Certainly, sir. I see this is for this weekend. There will be a cancellation fee of... Whatever it is, charge it. I want this canceled immediately." "Done. Is there anything else I can help you with?" "Actually, yes. If anyone calls trying to rebook this reservation, please let them know the credit card has been canceled for fraud prevention." Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. Nessa lunged for the phone, but I held her off with one hand. "Thank you, Janet. Have a great day." I hung up and looked at my wife. Really looked at her. When had she become this person? When had I become someone she was ashamed of? "You can't do this," she whispered. "I just did." I walked past her toward the kitchen. "Better call your boys and let them know the party's off, unless one of them wants to foot the bill." "Jared, please? You don't understand what you're doing." I stopped at the kitchen counter, where the morning mail was still scattered. Bills, advertisements, and one envelope that had been sitting there for weeks. I picked it up and handed it to her. "Divorce papers," I said quietly. "I've been thinking about it for months. Today just made the decision easier." Her hands shook as she took the envelope. "You can't be serious." "Serious." I grabbed my keys from the hook by the door. "I'm going to work. When I get home, I want you to explain to me exactly what kind of marriage we have here. Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like I'm married to someone who's embarrassed by me and planning God knows what with her male colleagues." I left her standing there, envelope clutched in her hands, and drove to my office. But I couldn't concentrate on work. My mind kept replaying those messages, the casual cruelty in her words, the way she dismissed me like I was nothing. By lunch, I'd made a decision. If Nessa wanted to play games, I could play too. But I'd been fixing broken things my whole life, and I knew how to take them apart just as well. Time to remind my wife who she was dealing with. I met Derek at the outpost that evening. Derek Martinez had been my best friend since high school, back when we were both grease monkeys dreaming of better things. He'd become a cop, served 10 years, then quit to run his family's auto shop. Now he fixed cars and dispensed wisdom over cheap beer. "So she's cheating?" Derek said after I'd told him everything. He didn't ask, just stated it like a fact. "I don't know for sure. Could just be emotional affair stuff. But those messages?" I shook my head. The way they talked about initiation, about her showing them what she's made of. "Brother, I've seen this movie before. Rich boy thinks he can take whatever he wants, including other men's wives." Derek took a long pull from his beer. "The question is, what are you going to do about it?" I canceled their party, filed for divorce. "That's a start. But guys like Mitch Cavanaugh don't give up easy. They'll just move the party somewhere else." "Like where?" Derek grinned. "Funny you should ask. Word around town is old Henry Cavanaugh's got a cabin up on Bear Mountain. Real private. Perfect for the kind of party your wife's planning." I felt something cold settle in my stomach. "How do you know this?" "Because I service the vehicles for half the rich families in this county, including the Cavanaughs. Mitch was in yesterday, bragging about some big weekend he had planned. Said something about breaking in fresh meat at the family cabin." The bar suddenly felt too small, too hot. I stood up, paced to the window, stared out at the parking lot where normal people lived normal lives. "Jared." Derek's voice was gentle but firm. "You can't just let this slide. These people, they think they're untouchable, think they can walk all over guys like us because we don't have their money or connections. So what do you suggest? Fight back, but smart. Use what you know." I turned around. "What do I know?" "You know computers. You know how to find information, and you know these people are planning something that would get them all fired if the right person found out about it." He was right. I'd been thinking like a victim, but I was better than that. I'd built my business from nothing, learned skills these privileged idiots couldn't even spell. Time to put them to use. "I need to get into Nessa's work email," I said. "Can you do that?" She uses the same password for everything. Never learned proper security. I sat back down, mind already working. "If I can document what they're planning, maybe send it to the right people. Now you're talking, but you need more than emails. You need proof they're actually doing what they're planning." "How do I get that?" Derek's grin turned predatory. "Leave that to me. I know that cabin. Used to hunt those woods with my dad. There's ways to watch without being seen." We spent the next hour planning. Derek would handle surveillance, I'd handle the digital warfare. By the time we left the outpost, I felt something I hadn't felt in months. Hope. The house was dark when I got home. Nessa's car was in the driveway, but she'd left the divorce papers on the kitchen table unsigned. A note was paper-clipped to them. "We need to talk. This is crazy. N." I crumpled the note and threw it away. Then I fired up my laptop and got to work. Nessa's work email was a goldmine. Months of flirtatious messages with Mitch, complaints about me to Rita from HR, and detailed planning for what they called Nessa's initiation weekend. The more I read, the sicker I felt. But I also felt something else. Anger. Pure, clean anger that burned away the self-doubt and hurt. I forwarded the most damaging emails to a secure account, then started researching Mitch's family. The Cavanaughs were old money, the kind of people who cared deeply about reputation. Henry Cavanaugh sat on the boards of 3 charities and the local Chamber of Commerce. His son's crude messages about initiating a married woman would not go over well. By midnight, I had a plan. The next morning, I called in sick to work and drove to the library. Using their public computer, I created an anonymous email account and sent Henry Cavanaugh a carefully crafted message. No accusations, just, thought you should know what your son is planning at the family cabin this weekend, along with screenshots of the group chat. Then I went home and waited. Nessa came back around noon, eyes red from crying. Jared, please, can we talk about this like adults? Sure. Let's start with you explaining what kind of initiation your work friends have planned. She sat down across from me, hands folded like she was in a job interview. It's not what you think. It's just hazing, like a fraternity thing. Stupid jokes, drinking games, nothing serious. Male-only hazing, for my wife. That makes perfect sense. I know how it sounds, but... My phone buzzed. Text message from Derek. Package delivered. Old man Cavanaugh is not happy. I smiled and Nessa noticed. What's that about? Just work stuff. I put the phone away. So tell me more about these drinking games. But before she could answer, her phone started ringing. Mitch's name lit up the screen. Aren't you going to answer that? She stared at the phone like it might explode. Maybe later. It rang again immediately. Then again. Seems urgent, I said. Better take it. With shaking hands, she answered. Hello? Even from across the room, I could hear Mitch shouting. Something about his father, the cabin being off limits, and the whole weekend being ruined. I don't know how he found out, Nessa said into the phone. No, I didn't tell anyone. What do you mean someone sent him screenshots? She looked at me with sudden suspicion. I kept my expression neutral. I have to go, she said into the phone. We'll figure this out. She hung up and stared at me. Did you do something? Like what? Like, I don't know. Contact his family somehow. Nessa, I don't even know his family. I'm just a blue-collar bore, remember? Her phone buzzed with a text, then another. Her face went pale as she read them. What now? I asked. Rita says HR wants to see me first thing Monday. Someone sent them screenshots of our group chat. Huh, that's unfortunate. She stood up, paced to the window, spun back around. This is you, isn't it? You're sabotaging my career. I'm protecting myself. There's a difference. By destroying my life? By documenting what you were planning to do. I leaned back in my chair. Tell me, Nessa, if the roles were reversed, if I was planning a weekend retreat with female colleagues where I'd be initiated while making jokes about how you wouldn't fit in, how would you feel? She opened her mouth, closed it, opened it again. No words came out. That's what I thought. I stood up. I'm going out for a while. When I get back, maybe you'll be ready to have an honest conversation about what kind of marriage we want to have, if we want to have one at all. I left her standing there, phone buzzing with increasingly frantic messages from her co-conspirators. Phase 1 was complete, but I was just getting started. Derek called me Saturday morning with an update. Your wife and her friends found another venue, some dive motel outside town, but here's the interesting part. Mitch is furious. Apparently, Daddy cut off his credit cards and kicked him out of the family business pending an investigation. Investigation into what? Using company resources for personal entertainment. Turns out some of those group chat messages were sent during work hours, on company devices. HR is not amused. I felt a grim satisfaction. What about Nessa? She's in damage control mode. Spent yesterday trying to convince everyone this was all a misunderstanding, but Rita's throwing her under the bus to save her own job. Good old Rita. Always looking out for number one. There's more. I followed them to the motel last night. Nothing happened. They just sat around drinking and complaining about you. But I got some interesting photos of Mitch and Nessa together. Very together, if you know what I mean. My hands tightened on the phone. How together? Let's just say they weren't discussing quarterly reports. The anger hit me like a physical blow. All those late nights working, all those times she'd come home smelling like cologne that wasn't mine. How long had I been the fool in this equation? Send me the photos, I said. You sure? Once you see them, there's no going back. I'm sure. The photos arrived 5 minutes later. Nessa and Mitch in the motel parking lot, her arms around his neck, his hands on her waist, another shot of them through the window, sitting close on the bed, his hand on her thigh. Nothing explicit, but intimate enough to tell the story. I stared at the images until they burned into my memory, then forwarded them to my lawyer with a note. Grounds for adultery clause. Proceed with divorce immediately. Nessa came home Sunday evening, looking defeated. Her hair was messy, her clothes wrinkled, and she couldn't meet my eyes. How was your work retreat? I asked. Fine, just team-building stuff. At the Sleepy Inn Motel? Classy choice. Her head snapped up. How did you know where you were? Lucky guess. I held up my phone, showing one of Derek's photos. Nice picture, very professional. She sank into a chair like all the air had gone out of her. Jared, I can explain. Can you? Because it looks pretty self-explanatory to me. It's not what it looks like. We were just talking. With his hand on your thigh? That's some conversation. Tears started flowing, but I felt nothing. The woman crying in my kitchen was a stranger who happened to look like my wife. I made a mistake, she whispered. It didn't mean anything. Which part? The affair or the marriage? There's no affair. We got close. Working together, spending time together. But nothing happened. I laughed, and the sound surprised me. Cold, bitter, nothing like my usual laugh. Nessa, I have photos of you two together. I have months of flirtatious emails. I have text messages about initiation weekends and showing the boys what you're made of. What exactly do you think nothing happened means? She looked up at me with red, swollen eyes. Are you going to divorce me? Already filed the papers. My lawyer says with the adultery evidence, I should get a pretty favorable settlement. Adultery? But we never... Emotional adultery is still adultery in this state, especially when there's a pattern of deception and intimate contact. I sat down across from her. But here's what I don't understand. Why? Was I really that bad a husband? No, you were fine. Good, even. But Mitch, he made me feel special, important, like I was more than just a suburban housewife. You're not a housewife. You have a career. Had. Rita called this morning. I'm suspended pending investigation. They're reviewing all my communications with male colleagues. That's unfortunate. Stop saying that. This is my life you're destroying. I leaned forward. No, Nessa. This is your life you destroyed. I just documented it. My phone rang. Derek's number. Excuse me, I told Nessa and stepped into the next room. You need to see this, Derek said without preamble. Mitch is at the outpost, drunk off his rear end, telling everyone who'll listen that he's going to teach you a lesson. Says you ruined his life and he's not going to take it lying down. What kind of lesson? The kind that involves him and 3 of his buddies showing up at your house tonight. I felt ice water in my veins. Are you serious? Serious. I'm heading over there now to keep an eye on things, but you might want to consider staying somewhere else tonight. No. The word came out harder than I'd intended. This is my house. If he wants to come here, let him come. Jared, think about this. These guys are drunk and angry and used to getting their way. So am I. Angry, I mean. And tired of running. I hung up and walked back into the kitchen. Nessa was still crying, but quietly now. Pack a bag, I told her. What? Pack a bag. Go stay with Rita or your sister or whoever, but don't stay here tonight. Why? What's happening? Your boyfriend is drunk and making threats. I don't want you caught in the middle when he shows up. Her face went white. He wouldn't actually come here, would he? You know him better than I do. What do you think? She stared at me for a long moment, then got up and headed toward the stairs. I'll be at my sister's. Good choice. 20 minutes later, she was gone, and I was alone in my house waiting for whatever came next. I'd spent my whole marriage trying to be the good guy, the understanding husband, the man who didn't make waves. Tonight, that was going to change. They showed up at 11:30, just drunk enough to be stupid, but not drunk enough to be harmless. 4 of them. Mitch, Gavin, and 2 guys I didn't recognize. They pounded on my front door like they owned the place. I'd spent the evening preparing. Derek was positioned across the street with a camera. I'd set up my own recording equipment inside the house, and I'd called the police to let them know there might be a disturbance at my address. Open up, Sollace. Mitch's voice was slurred but angry. We need to talk. I opened the door but kept the chain lock engaged. It's late, Mitch. Maybe we should do this when you're sober. I'm sober enough to know you ruined my life, you pathetic piece of trash. How did I ruin your life? By canceling a party reservation? You sent those messages to my father. You got me fired. I didn't get you fired. You got yourself fired by using company equipment to plan your little initiation party. One of the guys I didn't recognize stepped forward. Big guy, looked like he'd played football in college and never got over it. Let us in, or we're coming in anyway. I don't think so. I held up my phone, showing the recording app. But please, keep making threats. My lawyer will love this. Mitch shoved the big guy aside. You think you're so smart, don't you? Blue-collar nobody who got lucky with computers? Well, guess what? Your wife doesn't think you're so smart. She thinks you're boring. She told me so while I was While you were what, Mitch? He grinned, ugly and mean, while I was showing her what a real man feels like. The words hit me like a slap, but I kept my voice steady. Is that what you call 30 seconds of disappointment? Because that's what she told me it was. His grin faltered. She's lying. Maybe. Or maybe you're just not as impressive as you think you are. Gavin stepped up beside Mitch. You're going to pay for what you did to us. All of us. What I did was expose what you were planning. If that ruined your lives, maybe you should have planned better activities. The big guy tried to shoulder the door open, but I'd reinforced it after Derek's warning. The chain held. Last chance, Mitch said. Open this door and take what's coming like a man, or we'll make it worse. Or, I said, you could leave now and pretend this never happened, because in about 5 minutes the police are going to drive by on their regular patrol, and when they see 4 drunk guys trying to break into my house, well, that's going to be hard to explain. As if on cue, I heard a car engine in the distance, getting closer. Mitch heard it too. His face went from angry to worried, to panicked in about 3 seconds. This isn't over, he said, backing away from the door. Yes, it is, I replied. It's been over since you decided to mess with my wife. You just didn't know it yet. They stumbled back to their car and drove off just as the police cruiser rounded the corner. I waved to Officer Johnson, who'd been patrolling this neighborhood for 15 years. He slowed down, rolled down his window. Everything okay, Jared? Just fine, Jim. Thanks for the drive-by. Anytime. Have a good night. After he left, I called Derek. Did you get all that? Every word, and some great shots of them trying to break down your door. This is going to look fantastic in court. Good. Phase 2 is complete. What's Phase 3? I looked around my empty house at the pictures of Nessa and me that suddenly seemed like artifacts from someone else's life. Phase 3 is where they learn what happens when you underestimate the blue-collar guy. The next morning, I uploaded Derek's photos and my audio recordings to a secure cloud account, then sent copies to my lawyer, Nessa's HR department, and Mitch's father. But I also sent them somewhere else, the local newspaper's anonymous tip line. The Millbrook Gazette wasn't exactly the Washington Post, but it was read by everyone in town, and the editor had a reputation for not liking the wealthy families who thought they ran everything. By Tuesday, the story was front-page news. Local business exec involved in harassment scandal. They didn't use names, but in a town of 12,000 people, everyone knew who they were talking about. Nessa called me that afternoon, hysterical. Everyone knows. My sister, my friends, people at the grocery store. They're all staring at me. Maybe you should have thought about that before planning your initiation weekend. You did this. You leaked it to the newspaper. I documented harassment and attempted breaking and entering. What the newspaper does with public information is their business. Yeah, public information? Those were private messages. Messages sent on company devices, planning activities that violated company policy, involving harassment of a married woman. Nothing private about it. She was crying again, but I felt no sympathy. My life is ruined, Jared. I can't show my face anywhere. You'll survive. People have short memories. Easy for you to say. You're not the one everyone's calling a what, Nessa? Nothing. Never mind. No, say it. What is everyone calling you? Silence on the other end of the line. Because whatever they're calling you, it's probably accurate. And it's definitely something you brought on yourself. I hate you, she whispered. I know, but I don't care anymore. I hung up and went back to work. Real work. Fixing computers, solving problems that had actual solutions. It felt good to be useful again. Derek stopped by that evening with a six-pack and a grin. Have you seen the latest? He handed me his phone, showing a social media post from Rita. She was announcing her promotion to Nessa's old position, thanking the company for maintaining professional standards and supporting a harassment-free workplace. She didn't waste any time, I said. Vultures never do. But here's the really good part. Mitch got arrested this morning. For what? Drunk and disorderly. Apparently he showed up at his father's office demanding his job back. When security tried to escort him out, he took a swing at them. I felt a deep satisfaction settle in my chest. How the mighty have fallen. There's more. His father issued a statement disowning him. Cut him off completely. Word is he's staying in that same motel where you caught him with Nessa. Poetic justice. We sat in comfortable silence for a while, drinking beer and watching the sun set through my kitchen window. So what now? Derek asked. Now I rebuild. New life, new start, Maybe sell this house, move somewhere fresh. You could stay. You won, after all. I thought about that. Had I won? Nessa was disgraced, Mitch was ruined, and I was alone in a house full of memories I didn't want anymore. Winning isn't the same as being happy, I said. No, but it beats losing. He was right about that. For the first time in months, I felt like myself again, not the doormat husband who ignored red flags and made excuses for his wife's behavior. Not the blue-collar bore who wasn't good enough for the country club crowd. Just Jared Sollace, a man who knew how to fix things, including his own life. The divorce papers came through 3 weeks later. Nessa had signed them without contest, probably hoping to minimize the public attention. She'd moved back in with her parents and was working part-time at a retail store, the only job she could get after the scandal. I should have felt sorry for her. Maybe the old me would have. But the old me was gone, replaced by someone harder and smarter and less willing to be taken for granted. Derek was right. Winning wasn't the same as being happy, but it sure beat the alternative. 2 months after the divorce was finalized, I thought it was over. I was wrong. I was leaving the outpost on a Friday night when I saw her. Nessa, sitting in her car across the street, watching me. She'd lost weight, looked older, but her eyes still held that familiar calculating look. I walked over and tapped on her window. She rolled it down. "Following me now?" I asked. "We need to talk." "I think we've said everything we need to say." "Please, Jared, just 5 minutes." Against my better judgment, I got in the passenger seat. The car smelled like cheap perfume and desperation. "I want to make a deal," she said without preamble. "What kind of deal?" "I'll split the settlement money with you, half and half. But I need you to retract your statements about the affair." I stared at her. "Are you serious?" "I can't get a decent job with this hanging over me. If you just say you were mistaken, that you misunderstood what you saw, you want me to lie. I want you to give me a chance to rebuild my life." "Like you gave me a chance when you were planning your initiation weekend?" Her face hardened. "That was different." "How?" It was stupid, a mistake. But what you did was calculated. You destroyed multiple people's lives." I exposed the truth. "There's a difference." She turned to face me fully. "Mitch is in rehab. Did you know that? He tried to hurt himself after his father disowned him." "That's unfortunate, but it's not my responsibility." "Isn't it? You could have just divorced me quietly. Instead, you had to humiliate everyone involved." "You humiliated yourselves. I just made sure people knew about it." She was quiet for a moment, staring out the windshield. "I loved you, you know. Maybe not at the end, but I did love you." "No, you didn't. You loved the idea of me. The stable husband who paid the bills and didn't ask too many questions. But you never loved me." "That's not true." "Then why were you so embarrassed by me? Why did you call me a blue-collar bore? Why did you plan a male-only party specifically to exclude me?" She didn't answer. "I'll tell you why," I continued. "Because you thought you were better than me. You thought you deserved someone richer, more sophisticated, more connected, someone like Mitch." "Maybe I did think that," she admitted quietly. "But I was wrong." "Yes, you were, but not for the reasons you think." She looked at me questioningly. "You weren't wrong because I'm some great catch you let slip away. You were wrong because you never understood what marriage is supposed to be. It's not about finding someone impressive enough to show off to your friends. It's about finding someone who has your back when things get tough." "I know that now." "Do you? Because sitting here asking me to lie for you suggests you still don't get it." Her phone buzzed. Text message. She glanced at it and her face went pale. "What now?" I asked. "Rita. She says someone's been asking questions about me at work. About whether I might be willing to provide services for male clients." I felt sick. "What kind of services?" "You know what kind." Her voice was barely a whisper. "The story about the initiation weekend? People are interpreting it differently than what actually happened." "What actually happened, Nessa?" She was quiet for so long, I thought she wasn't going to answer. "We were going to film something for Mitch's private collection. Nothing too explicit, just suggestive. He said it would be fun, like being in a movie." The pieces clicked into place. The male-only weekend, the initiation jokes, the secrecy. It wasn't just an affair. It was something much worse. "He was going to blackmail you," I said. "No, it wasn't like that. It was my idea. I wanted to do something exciting, something that would make me feel alive again." "By making amateur movies with your boss?" "It sounds horrible when you say it like that." "It sounds horrible because it is horrible." I opened the car door. I can't help you, Nessa, even if I wanted to. Please, I'm begging you. I got out of the car and leaned down to the window. You made your choices. Now you get to live with them. Jared, wait. But I was already walking away. Behind me, I heard her car start up and drive off into the night. I never saw her again. Derek found me at my house an hour later, sitting on the porch with a beer and a head full of regrets. Heard you had a visitor, he said, settling into the chair next to mine. News travels fast in this town. Rita called me. Apparently Nessa's been making the rounds, trying to get people to change their stories about what happened. Any takers? Not so far. Turns out when you throw people under the bus, they're not real eager to help you back up. We sat in comfortable silence, watching the stars come out over our small town. Somewhere out there, Nessa was probably planning her next move, her next attempt to rebuild her reputation. Mitch was in rehab, trying to put his life back together. Rita was enjoying her promotion and her newfound moral authority. And I was here, alone but not lonely, free but not entirely happy. Any regrets? Derek asked. I thought about it. About the marriage that had started with such hope. About the woman I'd thought I knew. About the man I'd become in the process of defending myself. Yeah, I said finally. I regret not seeing who she really was sooner. That's it? That's enough. Derek nodded and cracked open his own beer. So, what's next for Jared Sollace? I looked at my house, at the life I'd built, and defended and ultimately had to tear down to save myself. Tomorrow I'd start over. New town, new clients, new possibilities, but tonight I was exactly where I needed to be. Next, I said, I remember what I learned. Which is? Never underestimate the blue-collar guy. Derek laughed, and the sound echoed across the quiet neighborhood where I'd fought my war and won my freedom. It wasn't the ending I'd planned when I first said I do to Nessa Sollace, but it was the ending I'd earned, and that was enough.